everything he said to me was a lie, and I went along with it to see if I could find a way out of this maze. And I knew how this worked, and it helped me later in life because they hooked us up to a different type of experiment, like these people in the Resident Evil house of hypostasis time slots, which were just like cylinders or beds that you would lay on. And some of the beds were like a glass container, a little bit of fluid in the bottom of them, and a mask would go over your face, and keeping you in a suspension fluid. And then the gas would taste like orange or cherry, and it was periodically sinking us in and out of the reality they wanted us to become. And they were forcing us out of our bodies, and our soul would pop out of our body. I called it body popping. And we'd get used to being outfitted into a clone body in this training. So we had human trainers primarily, but sometimes non-human. So they wanted to see how the mind works with different species, cross DNA implementation, injections, various conflicting training methods, and if the left and right sides of the brain could mesh and meld with Anunnaki mindsets and other species and become completely taken over or not. So it was like a survival of the fittest out there, because they're consciousness thieves and soul suckers. And I tested the limits, and out of desperation, my own types of testing and faith from on high. One day, I actually had David distract them downstairs in the kitchen table, and I went out to the back door of the barn of the Resident Evil barn house, and I unplugged the vegetable people from the monitors and actually told them to go outside and kill the black suits. And the people followed me, and we were met with one of the old guys from the house and then a couple more outside. And the zombie-like people went for them and knocked them down, and one of them didn't listen to me for some reason and ended up coming towards me like it was going to attack me. And I was in between this person and one of the old men standing there. And then I heard shots fired from the watchtower because there was a rifleman up there, because it was constant surveillance, and it was at his post. So there was a couple old men that went down that day, and one of the old guys was standing there staring at me, and I was just in shock. And he was speaking to me, but I didn't comprehend or know what he was saying partly. And after things calmed down, he told me that he was really nice after that point, and told me that they were so relieved that nothing had happened to me, and that they've been trying to get me home for weeks, and that they saved my life, so I owed them, and I needed to help them, needed to stay and help the sick people get better, and all these lies. So I acted fast that day because I didn't want to turn into something I didn't like the replacement kids, and I needed to keep my compassion. That's why I tried to set these zombie-like people free. So I was taken up to the general's office after that in the tower, and he told me how proud he was of me, and I saluted him, and I knew he was a good man fighting for his mind, and I watched him change over the years and the agony that he was in. Later in life, I was trained in the Resident Evil barn, and I remember pills in brown lunch bags, and overcoming my deepest, darkest fears, and they would record everything. My stomach would hurt from hours of training. We got shots in our stomach, steroids, and all sorts of other things. One of the pills would either make you really, really smart or really, really screw you up. So they just gambled with us, and our bodies uncharted everything and told us everything they were doing, basically. So they were pumping us up with all the stuff and having us do very vigorous, extreme training and things with our bodies we'd never done before, testing the limits. So I think I was also kicked in the stomach if I couldn't perform the physical tasks they wanted, and they monitored our progress every day. And the old men lived in the long Skull and Bones house adjacent to this barn house. And one day me and Lane decided to breach the frequency bars that they had put in front of the house, which were white. And he was getting memory wiped a lot, and I brought him to the trail in the woods marked by two tall rods that weren't telephone poles, and I asked him to look closely because I could see the shimmering green energy and gray magnetism and see the ship and the Anunnaki guarding it in that area of the woods. But he was losing his sensitivity over time, and he couldn't see it anymore, but 11 still did. So then we went to the Skull and Bones house one day and decided to prove a point, and went past the white bars around the perimeter, and we spied on them from the backwoods. And one day I got into the house and jumped on their table with him, and we scared the shit out of them with their own dog mutant creations, their war dogs. And And we let them go because they had already calculated this and knew that we were going to do that. And they had new tech set in place already, which was this halo device that they put around our necks. So I think we just wanted to prove our point, and we'd get hyped up about this. And I remember another memory is I remember Bush Sr. breaking the necks of 2 kids in the schoolhouse and draining their blood in front of me and telling me to take care of it. I also remember Barbara Bush trying to feed us aborted fetal parts on chips or Pringles and treating us like pets. And they could just put you back on a shelf and take you down. And we were close to freeing our minds that day, but something happened and we stopped acting wild and free, like I said, because they had the new Halo tech in play. And we knew we were in trouble then because we got gridlocked into this system of the White House for a while. And me and Lane had a training house building that they let us go into, and we tried to get in the other buildings with various tools and whatnot, like how to open a door and be on the other side of it with these weird energy tools and stuff. And we just go around the whole camp and leave our marks around everything, which look like alien symbols and otherworldly signs. It's like we developed our own code language to each other a lot of times. And we'd impress each other because we'd get into doors and buildings and stuff and then tell each other how we did it. So we had our own time there, and we just sat on the cement love seat on the outside of the building and pretended it was our house. And we had this oval window behind us that you couldn't see through, and it was like our fort. So yeah, we just had like a playground out there as teenagers, and there's no keys for anything. They just had us do all sorts of weird tasks and like engraved markings all over the place and sigils and things that were inside jokes to us. When we didn't have cell phones or anything, we just responded to signals everywhere. And we had a trainer that had blonde hair, wore a suit and a tie, and he'd call us, we'd jump, tell us what to do, we'd answer, and then we'd just go get to do whatever we wanted as long as we did what they wanted. And even though we were given the best tech on missions, like bendable screens and whatnot, when we'd be in altar, we'd like be amazed at this simple tech like a cell phone this guy had back then, when cell phones weren't even out. And then we'd get these shots and pills and agendas daily and these papers of what to do. And my body still has a lot of trouble from all the aftermath and muscle and neurological spasms and nanotech deep imprinting, especially in the right temple that spikes and muscles hulking out for no reason. And this may have been there to keep like a certain muscle mass and inertia. But me and Lane, we also had this machete, and we made this trail in the woods one day, and we cleared a view so that when we sat on top of the building, we could see this field, and we felt like we had something of our own, and like no kids bothered us. So it killed me when I planned on how to leave this system in Camp Hero, and I knew I couldn't tell anyone about my plans, because if you're about to do something that's going to change the course of history, you don't tell anybody. So they may have took it as a betrayal, but a good leader makes decisions based on the benefit and hope of a better life for all, even if it meant most wouldn't remember anything, or even that we had spent a lifetime out there together already in this indefinable and indescribable place. And this large white apartment building was housing for us as teenagers. We were assets and residents of an evil place. So it had many rooms and an obscure path to the door. And there was this bar of remediation in front of it. It was called like a white crossbar laying on the ground, and that connected us to this AI checkpoint. And then it had a big, long, yellow, long light that looked like an eye on the house above the door. And you'd have to confront that every day and go through that. And it'd feel like this rope was pulling you magnetically by your neck to the checkpoint, because they put halos around our necks when we didn't comply or ran. And so I just stand there, and if I go to the left of the crossbar and tried to think about my past, it would get me stuck. And then I'd have to have some worker there, some reptilian man come help me with the magnetism release or get unstuck. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the checkpoint staring at the building. And if I went to the right and tried to calculate any future outcomes, it would send shocks to my head. And if you tried to bypass the whole system or jump over the bar, it would propel you backwards so hard you'd fall down on your ass and then get reset back to the same checkpoint point. So it calculated our every move and try to create algorithms for us 24/7. So then this connected us to the mainframe, and we'd be cleared once we went into the house on the straight line and had no deviating thoughts. And we were on cue for stabilization and programming, understanding our assignments, and on board with all the supplementation, and then a bag lunch we'd get every day, and thought remediation from this gridlocked house. So they had to keep me and 11 away from this God computer brain, made a brain they had back there in the back room. And I would make up songs and sing about splitting its brain in half all the time, because me and her would somehow melt its brain. And I would just think of the saying line upon line, precept upon precept, layer by layer, and these Bible verses, and sift through these wavelengths that were going through my fingers and the digital DNA or data that I would see flying through the air, because it was like a female voice that tried to speak to you. So I'd sing songs about how stupid the AI was, the OA, and look into the camera, and I really did try to split its brain in two. Its false need to spawn out a formless androgyny and proclaim itself a carbon copy, digital father-mother creator with no will of its own or connection to source. And since everything we did was scrutinized, they recorded everything and spun it out later in the future to the masses, or made songs out of what we sang in our rooms in the cloning centers, much like many Tool songs. And when the doors unlocked, we attacked it in the back room. And I smashed it. So we had some Nazis, and Alpha Kino ended up starting to choke our clones with ropes, and then started this breeding program where the Moo whole thing started, reference to the moon, but also to cow barn. So I remember sleeping with an orange, taste in the back of my throat from breathing in some medicine. It's like they would suffocate your body almost to the point where it would just lay there in a dormant state, and you'd basically be popped out of your body. And at first I didn't know what being in a clone felt like, because I was trying to run really fast, but it was like being in mud. And then I realized what was happening, and then you could see through the spirit world, and you could see through so many things, and it was to get you in this training where you could be faster and better and maneuver around this ultraviolet rays, 360-degree training that they had you go through up there constantly in this loop, like an obstacle course. So I couldn't understand why the windows and the drapes were so tall in one of those back rooms, but it's because it was a barn building. So yeah, at first I felt like I was walking in mud, so then when I'd pop out of my body, then I'd get a head start the next time, and then be looking at it from an aerial view, and I could see astrocartography and all sorts of things, and I could see that Camp Hero looked like an Egyptian cat from astrocartographical view. And they even had tech they upgraded us with later that could take a picture out of your eye if you were on missions, and the tech you were carrying. But I was up in the spirit. I would get a head start, and I would just dive bomb back down into the clone body, and then get faster and better at it each time by doing that. So I'd start out on the bottom in this obstacle course and slay the experiments that were down there, and then move upstairs to various rooms. And sometimes they'd walk through a black hallway. They'd play back a recording in your head, and remember screaming at the camera, "I hate you." And I hated it at first, because you'd just be feeling your way through this dark hallway and then get an image in your mind of you being abused as a child or something. So I screamed at the camera. I remember it had a red light on it, and like a strong adult would, because I was just a teenager, probably like 13 or 14, and I still couldn't understand how people could torment children like this and get away with it. This corporation that they had us just lost away into. So it was just unjust and unfair, and they'd laugh over the speakers at you and tell you wouldn't remember anything anyways, and that they were going to make a movie about it later someday. And I wanted to kill them every time I'd get confronted with their faces. My eyes would just look sideways, because you could never look at them in the eyes without permission. Then I'd hear what we'd call skinwalkers walking and hunting us down and smelling for us up and down in the hallway, like they were going to kill your body if you didn't get kicked out of your body and get used to this clone body stuff. So they call them void walkers, skinwalkers, whatever. They're just like howling empty creatures. And we heard this other man like scraping down the sides of the hallway with an axe. And we just had to go to the back bedroom at some point. But in this back bedroom, they had a video recorder set up. And then they brought in 2 more girls from the south to show us how it was done, because we wouldn't do anything that they wanted. You know, and then they started drugging you to have orgies. And this was the start of the hybridization program, and told us what they were going to, they told us what they were going to do with their fetuses, basically. Like, they can take a fetus out at 3 months. They could sacrifice them, hybridize them, or use them to kill us in the future. And we really hated them for this, and they wanted a black queen. So Carmen and Brandy played along with the Nazi hats, and Carmen became this black queen who sacrificed a fetus in the moonlight in the Red Room. And it reminded me of a time when they had us stand in a circle as a kid and told us to kill a kid our age, and if we didn't, we'd be put in a room. And we chose door number 3 because we had our own mental safety net in that number of the Trinity. And if we chose something else, they thought, they told us that our family and loved ones would all be killed. So we didn't hurt an innocent life, and we were protected from on high. But one boy did believe them and did what they wanted. So then at that point I heard like fancy shoes clicking on the concrete floor, and I would feel better. And their shoes were even white. We called these guys the white hats, or the white elders, because their canes were white. There's like a straight walking cane that I liked a lot, and the man showed it to me, and it was black and white. But these white hats came in, and they actually stopped the ritual abuse at some point, and I felt a relief when I saw these guys come in. It was like a nicely dressed individual with a hat, correcting these monsters that we were left with. But it came back in a training guise with Alpha as teenagers. The SRA did, in one form or another, just like the white dragon snake encounter I had by age 5 that branded me a leader of some ancient realm. It was more like a couple white elders, but they were in white fancy suits and hats and shoes, and like I said, they were white, and sometimes they had like a bit of pink or yellow in the suit. But they told the 2 military guys in there that the games they were playing were for senseless animals. And then I go into the back room that I had psychically known that the white hats went into. Sometimes they didn't even speak with their mouths, and you just hear what they said in their minds. So one of these guys, he put me on his lap in the room, and that I was waiting in, and I agreed to what he was telling me and felt better. And you know, he was impressed that I knew what number to pick, what room they were in, and they used a lot of cues for communication. And we made a Psylink that day. So then there was a dresser in that room, a rug, and a bed, and a chair. And he assured me that they wouldn't play those games anymore, and I was going to be there. I was there to be something special for them. So I saw his face, and then I looked over, and I saw this demon standing over there by the bed. And the other white hat that was standing in the corner somehow spiritually killed the demon, like in a blink of an eye, and rushed over to it. And the guy whose lap I was sitting on showed me in his mind like a dagger and how to kill demons. And then his eyes just got full of light, and the room was full of light. And the sun came in the window, and he touched my forehead and took any sexual abuse memories away. And then I was in a white dress after that. And these weren't the white elite men that did come in to check on us before, but these guys were angels showing me what to do in the future. And there's people called Oratorians that own a lot of these private islands. We also had some encounters with them. But I could barely see because the light was so bright in that room. Because, you know, there's a lot of shape-shifting going on. And some of those white elites that visited were tied in with the white Dracos too, and Venusians. So you had to know who is who in this game. But as far as the Resident Evil barn stuff goes, I mean, they could, like, try to kill your clone 100 times and you still wouldn't do what they said. So that still continued. Let's let's see, Oratorians. Yeah, I guess I'll say this. Oratorians are good orators for computer linguistics and translators for cross-contamination with AI synthetic brain block builders. The Oratorians we met there later became regulators in this war on remote islands that we visited occasionally with lavish bases on these islands. Another thing is that most Dracos are androgynous and reproduce by parthenogenesis or cloning. One special group is male, a hybrid race that conquers others. The 11th dimensional bird tribe, the winged drac, Sikar, Mothmen, Ophanim, versus the Oraphim, angels. The Ark of the Covenant was a fractal self-similar capacitator like orgone with enough implosive compression to partially safely contain radioactive power. And humans are non-physical beings who remain in hyperspace. And the Syrians are their physical descendants. Ancient Hebrew is the language of this council, a holy language directly from the mind of God. Each letter is a symbol, number, archetype, and geometric shape that's used to translate from the spiritual into the physical. Each chapter of the Old Testament can be decoded into letter patterns and codes, every 7th letter. When recurring patterns are matched against one another, geometric shapes are formed. The reptilians' neurosis was their need for slaves to control any living thing they encountered. And they're taught the draconian version of the history of the Great Galactic War, which teaches that humans are at fault for invading the universe. And I was given their draconian book, which was stained by the blood of all family members by Bush Sr. himself. And it was the most satanic thing I've ever held in my hand. And I had a Bible in the other hand, and I dropped that book. They believe that humans selfishly want the draconian society to starve. They've got everything flipped upside down. And the Black Sun DNA is a draconian Orion group referred to as the Black Suns of Belial, from their DNA genetic lineage. And they have reversed their DNA, inciting aggression in timelines to a reverse 10 DNA strand running reversal life currents, which they use in the Iran gate to feed off of. So they're primarily from the satanic class. They cooperate with the Luciferian Belial families to control the planet and share the spoils of war. They can't cellularly transmute their body in out of stargates easily and use humans to do that. And they access limited levels of biological immortality through the vampirism and siphoning of other living things, such as planet Earth. And the Peter Pan programming was part of the soul siphoning process and being beamed up into the green light like Peter Pan going up into the happy place, which was only an Anunnaki mothership hub port of this AI. Now, males did not learn the Christos Sophia, which is a misunderstood concept.